Good morning. Being here amongst all our distinguished guests and speakers is a huge honour. The gathering's mission to revitalise democracy is one that speaks to many of us across the pond. It is as pressing in the UK as it is here. I'm here to talk to you about my National Health Service, the NHS. Its heart, its soul, and its backbone. I want to start by talking about trust. In my humble opinion, the most valued currency in politics is trust. Trust that comes with a sense of security in one's life at present and one's future. The NHS has prevailed as it provides that sense of security and hence inspires trust in the millions who use it daily. The NHS has earned love and trust because it is based on need, not on means. The trust in the NHS was built around the humble general practitioner, a family doctor supporting you from cradle to grave. This was a concept totally alien to me when I arrived in the UK aged 13 from Iran, a country where if you can afford it, you use private healthcare rather than a government-run service. Oddly familiar, isn't it? Recently, Jeremy Corbyn was asked why he thinks socialism would work in Britain. His answer? Look at the basis of our most valued institution, the NHS. The NHS is based on the socialist principle of access according to need, not ability to pay. This is the heart and soul of the NHS. It is no exaggeration to say that this British institution is revered and is more of a national obsession than a great cup of tea, or in fact, the weather. It is revered as it provides that most basic of human rights, free, universal healthcare at your time of need. As Martin Luther King put it so eloquently, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. I've had the honour of working in the NHS for many years. But to truly understand the value of the universal healthcare it provides, you have to experience it as a patient. With the storm of Brexit gathering pace, I had a healthy baby boy at our local hospital. I had been practicing cardiac anaesthesia shortly before this, and as some of my medical colleagues may empathise, my most pressing anxiety was that this baby was bound to be born with a heart defect. At no point did I have to worry about going bankrupt as a result of possible medical bills. Sadly, as a study in the American Journal of Medicine recently revealed, 42% of Americans have depleted their entire life's assets a mere 2 years after being diagnosed with cancer. At the 70th birthday of the NHS this summer, it seems pertinent to remind us all that the NHS was established as a publicly funded, publicly provided, and publicly accountable service. As a Second World War veteran, who recently deceased, and political commentator Harry Leslie Smith put it, the NHS is an institution for the people, by the people. These founding principles are being progressively dismantled. This has been a political choice through, in particular, the Conservative reforms in 2012. The hugely unpopular reforms have meant a market-based contract model. This has opened the gates to bidding wars, increase in private finance initiative contracts, and hugely pricey external advisors. With an underfunded NHS and a social care system on its knees due to cuts in local council expenditure, this fragmentation and privatization has had a devastating impact on patients' health. Patients, such as my constituent Joe, a retired postman, who relies on 10-minute social care visits from a private provider. These visits are means-tested and wholly inadequate. I ask you, what does this do to someone's dignity, to their sense of place in society? In hospitals up and down the country, changing a light bulb is carried out by outsourcing via now bankrupt Carillion maintenance service. A parliamentary report confirmed this year that not only has the NHS paid well over the odds for many projects, it is now tied to contracts that it can't afford to keep or get out of. The cost of changing that light bulb is increasing by the day, a story that I'm sure is familiar to many of you here. The political marketisation of this public service, austerity, worsening inequality, and the real possibility of a truly progressive government led by Jeremy Corbyn inspired me to dedicate my late evenings to campaigning and multiple meetings in very cold community halls, fueled by cups of tea and biscuits. The good news story is that I haven't been alone. Hundreds of others like me have joined the campaign. The trade union movement has been built on fighting social injustice and giving a collective voice to the less powerful in society. Trade unionists understand that the NHS is the backbone of a fairer society. This call to arms has felt very natural to health and social care workers. I will endeavour to give you a flavour of these movements over the next few minutes, ending in my hometown of Oxford. Daniel Tiplady is a young student nurse who was inspired to start the Bursary or Bust campaign. This was after nursing student subsidies were cut, forcing further debt onto these dedicated individuals. 2 years on from the removal of the NHS student bursary, applications to nursing degree courses have plummeted by a third in England. There's currently a shortage of 40,000 nurses. There are multiple reports of nurses using food banks in one of the richest nations in the world. Daniel's tireless campaigning has won her many supporters, including MPs on both sides of the political divide, and the Royal College of Nursing, which used to be apolitical. It's difficult to see and understand what that means anymore, don't you think? In fact, there have been huge recent changes in this nursing union of nearly 500,000 members. The executive resigned over the summer due to grassroots anger at the way the union sold the new NHS pay deal to its members, despite not really understanding the complex deal on offer. New council candidates are now standing on a platform of bringing the college back to its members. Over 900 catering, cleaning and portering staff in Wigan, Lancashire, that's in Northern England, were so concerned by the plan to outsource them that they voted for strike action via the trade unions Unison and Unite. This move would have meant possible worsening of terms and conditions and the move to a private sector company. The strike ended once Labour-led Wigan Council brokered a deal with the withdrawal of the proposed outsourcing. The healthcare assistants I worked with expressed similar concerns about making ends meet and avoiding homelessness. Staff in their 40s and 50s are forced to live in shared accommodation with up to 2/3 of their salaries spent on a small bedroom. Coming back to Dreaming Spires of Oxford now, we are set to become an integrated care system. You may well be asking, what is an integrated care system? Or its more toxic predecessor, the Accountable Care Organisation. If you're in the dark, don't worry, you're in good company. In a recent study, only 16% of Conservative members of Parliament said they understood what an accountable care organisation was. These American imports seem to be injecting organisations focused on profit-making into the heart of NHS decisions about who provides what and at what cost to patients. We're challenged in the courts, backed by none other than Stephen Hawking. They tell us this is supposed to deliver integration of health and social care services. Nobody would say that's a bad thing, surely. Sadly, these are not statutory bodies, and as such, there is no public accountability. In fact, locally, the proposed board responsible for the delivery of this colossal change does not have a single elected official on it. There is a worrying lack of clarity, which makes true engagement and consultation impossible. I am fighting these issues with my colleagues in Socialist Health Association, Keep Our NHS Public, and indeed via the council chambers. The market-driven approach will always cherry-pick. It will never take on the small, time-consuming, hard-to-measure interventions that made the UK healthier than much of the world and for less money than anywhere else. I find it fascinating and distressing in equal measures that though we in the UK and here in the USA are at different points in our healthcare story, the battles with marketisation and essentially a neoliberal ideology are the same battle. Make no mistake, this is about ideology. In terms of health inequalities in the UK, we are heading fast towards the USA. The men in the richest part of Oxford can expect to live to the grand old age of 90 in relatively good health. The men in my ward of Northfield Brook to the age of 74.6. The conventions of speech writing dictate that I should end on a note of hope for the future. And thankfully, that's not hard for me to find. Inequality, and in particular health inequality, has recently been the focus of speeches and policy development by Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell, Labour Secretaries of Health and Education, amongst many others. They are reflecting what we see at the grassroots level, and it is at the grassroots that these battles will be won. There is now a real thirst in our countries for truth and for heart and soul politics. Universal healthcare truly is the beating heart of a civilized society. What better way to regain trust than by providing universal healthcare. I would like to end on a personal note from Oxfordshire. As I mentioned right at the beginning, being the child of a refugee and arriving in the UK as a teenager means I am passionate about the rights of refugees and asylum seekers. I am hugely proud of my comrades who recently won a 25-year battle to close the local detention centre. I would like to end on a poem by Shelley, written in 1819 after the Peterloo massacre, of the poor peacefully protesting for their right to vote. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. Thank you.